Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling something I think a lot of our listeners are probably already thinking about, is helping your kids build those good habits, set them up for success.
Mhm.
We've got some really interesting notes here all about raising those resilient, capable kids,
Mm.
and I'm excited to get into it.
Resilience, that's a big one, right?
It is.
Just that ability to bounce back when things get tough, adapt to all the changes that life throws at you, keep going even when it's hard.
For sure. And the source we're looking at today, it really stresses how important it is to build that strong foundation from the get-go.
Yeah.
It all starts with understanding those different stages of child development, right? So
Yeah.
knowing what's coming at each age, it seems like that could really help parents face those challenges in a way that sets kids up to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's like you're giving them the right tools at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about teaching responsibility for a sec.
Okay.
You wouldn't expect, say, a toddler to manage a whole chore chart, would you?
Right.
But you could definitely encourage them to help tidy up their toys.
Yeah.
So it's about meeting them where they're at developmentally and giving them more responsibilities as they get older.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this source also talks about how important it is for parents to be good role models.
Of course.
It even says that kids, they'll often copy our behavior without even realizing it. Like, you ever notice that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. Kids are watching us all the time, right?
Right.
They see how we react, how we deal with stress, even just like how we talk to other people. They're like little sponges,
Yeah,
soaking it all up.
totally.
If we want them to develop healthy habits, we got to make sure we're setting a good example ourselves.
I remember when my son, he started using this phrase I always say when I'm frustrated. It was so funny. But also kind of a wake-up call, like, wow, they really do pick up on everything.
They do. So
Yeah.
modeling those good behaviors is so key, whether it's reading, being active, even just expressing our emotions in a healthy way.
That's a good point. Okay, so next up in our notes here, it's routines.
Okay.
The source says that routines can actually help kids feel more secure and learn to regulate their emotions.
Right.
But I know some parents might worry that all those routines will make their kids inflexible, not able to adapt. What do you think about that?
It's a fair point. It's all about finding that balance.
Okay.
It's not about making some crazy strict schedule they can never stray from, right? It's more like giving them a predictable framework
Mm,
so they feel grounded, secure,
yeah.
like a scaffold while they're building those self-regulation skills.
Mhm.
And then as they get more confident, you can start to loosen things up a bit.
So not like a strict military timetable every single minute of the day, but just a general sense of predictability.
Exactly. And something that can help is actually getting the kids involved in creating those routines.
Okay.
If they have a say in, like, when they do homework, what time they have a snack, they're much more likely to, stick with it.
I like that, yeah. Takes away that feeling of like being controlled, gives them some ownership.
Totally. They become active participants in making their own days.
Cool. So we've got understanding development, being good examples, setting up those routines. What else can parents do to, help their kids build that resilience, those good habits?
Well, our source talks about encouraging kids to take on responsibilities,
Okay.
age-appropriate ones, obviously.
Right.
And they're really clear that it's not about perfection. It's about the effort, about contributing.
I always been a big believer in chores, even for little ones. But I'll admit, sometimes it's just easier and faster to do it myself.
Yeah.
Do you think that undermines their sense of responsibility, though, when I do that?
Well, it's something we all struggle with, right? We want to help, but sometimes our helping gets in the way of their growth. Think of it this way. When kids contribute, even in small ways, it gives them a sense of belonging, like they're a valuable part of the family.
It makes them feel like part of the team.
Exactly. It builds that self-efficacy, that belief that they can actually do things, that their actions matter.
I see.
Even if the laundry isn't perfectly folded or the dishwasher isn't loaded exactly how you do it, it's the effort that counts.
So praising their effort and their willingness to help, that's more important than just focusing on the outcome.
Absolutely. You're fostering that growth mindset
Yeah.
where they understand that mistakes are just part of learning and getting better.
This next point is about encouraging a love of learning, and I'm all about this one. I remember being totally obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid. There was this one book.
Yeah.
And it just sparked this huge curiosity in me.
Wow.
And it really led to a lifelong love of science.
That's awesome.
So how can parents encourage that kind of passion for learning, that comes from within?
That's a great example. And it shows us how learning doesn't have to be some chore, It can be exciting, something to discover. One of the best ways to encourage that is by modeling it ourselves. If they see us reading, exploring new ideas, engaging our minds, they'll start to see learning as something positive and rewarding.
So we got to show them that learning is something we value, not just something they got to do for school.
Exactly. And creating a stimulating environment helps too, where curiosity is encouraged and it's okay to explore. So like filling the home with books, having engaging conversations, giving them opportunities for hands-on learning, those things all make a big difference.
I love the idea of turning everyday experiences into learning moments. Like
Right.
instead of just pointing out a bird, you could actually look it up together and learn all about it.
Absolutely. You're nurturing that sense of wonder, making learning a part of life, not just something that happens in a classroom.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so from feeding their minds, let's talk about feeding their bodies. This source really stresses the importance of good habits when it comes to eating well, being active, and even limiting screen time.
Right. And that ties back to the idea of, harmonious development we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You got to remember that all these different aspects, physical, cognitive, emotional, social, they're all connected. Like if they're not getting enough sleep, that can mess with their focus at school and how well they handle their emotions.
Yeah, like a domino effect. One area impacts all the others.
Exactly. So those healthy habits, they're super important. And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
Simple things like cooking meals together as a family, getting them outside to play, or setting limits on screens.
So making those healthy choices just a natural part of their life.
Exactly.
What else does this source suggest, for raising those resilient, capable kids?
They talk about cultivating emotional intelligence.
Okay.
That means teaching kids to understand and manage their own emotions and being aware of how other people are feeling, too.
I hear so much about emotional intelligence these days, but what does that actually look like in practice? Like, how can we teach these skills?
Well, it starts with helping kids identify their emotions.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, you're being grumpy, you could say, it seems like you're feeling frustrated right now. Can you tell me what's up?
So giving them the words to name what they're feeling.
Exactly. It's like giving them a map to their inner world. And once they can identify their feelings, then you can start teaching them healthy ways to express and manage those emotions.
That makes a lot of sense, especially these days when there's so much pressure on kids to be happy and successful all the time.
It's true. We got to teach them that it's okay to feel all kinds of emotions, and there are healthy ways to deal with them.
So we've covered a lot here. We've talked about understanding development, setting a good example, establishing routines, fostering responsibility, encouraging learning, promoting healthy habits, and nurturing emotional intelligence. Phew. What else does this source highlight as being key to raising resilient kids?
Well, they talk about that balance between supporting our kids and also encouraging their independence.
Right.
It's about giving them the space to make choices, even small ones, and to learn from their mistakes.
It can be so hard to let go, though, especially when we see them struggling.
It is. But think about it. Every time we jump in and solve their problems, we're actually taking away their chance to learn those problem-solving skills themselves. It's about guiding, not controlling.
So instead of swooping in to fix everything, maybe we ask, what do you think you could do? Or what are some different ways to handle this?
Exactly. Empowering them to become independent thinkers.
Which builds their resilience and confidence.
Right.
There's one more point I want to hit before we move on.
Okay.
It's about positive reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Curious to hear your take on this.
It's a powerful tool. But this source, they emphasize that it's not just about giving rewards.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the effort, the progress, the whole learning process.
Celebrating those small wins along the way.
Exactly. And being specific in our praise.
Oh, okay.
So instead of just saying, good job, you could say, I'm so proud of how hard you worked on that. I could really see you focusing and sticking with it.
Showing them we notice their effort, their dedication. And that kind of affirmation can be really motivating.
For sure. It reinforces those good behaviors, helps them feel proud of their accomplishments.
This has been really insightful so far. We've learned so much about the fundamentals of raising those resilient kids. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to explore some more strategies for nurturing, that harmonious development.
While we were talking about positive reinforcement before the break, it really got me thinking about how important it is to acknowledge those little steps forward, especially when kids are learning something new or facing a challenge.
It's so true. It's so easy to, get caught up in what they aren't doing yet, or where they're falling short.
Yeah.
But celebrating those small wins along the way, that can make such a big difference.
It goes back to what we were saying about that growth mindset, when kids feel seen, appreciated for their effort, it keeps them going, keeps them trying, learning, pushing themselves.
Yeah, builds that resilience we're talking about. Now, before the break, we were touching on fostering independence. And I think this is a tough one for a lot of parents. It's like, how do we balance giving our kids support while also letting them make their own choices, even if it means they might mess up?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And our source today, they acknowledge that tension. They say a key part of raising those resilient kids is letting them experience the natural consequences of their actions.
So if they forget their lunchbox, maybe we don't rush to school with it.
Exactly. Within reason, of course. We're not going to put them in unsafe situations. But those minor setbacks, the oops moments, those can be so valuable.
Right.
They teach problem-solving resourcefulness. They learn they can actually overcome stuff.
It also kind of takes pressure off as parents, right? We don't always have to be the ones fixing everything.
It does. And think about it from their perspective. When they're always being rescued, it can make them doubt their own abilities,
So it's good for everybody. They learn to handle things themselves, and we get a little breathing room. Okay, next up in our notes is discipline. I think this can be a real struggle for a lot of parents. So what are your thoughts on approaching discipline in a way that, supports that harmonious development?
The source frames discipline as teaching, not punishment. It's about guiding kids towards making good choices, helping them understand why the rules are there.
So instead of just saying no, we explain the reason behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And being consistent is key.
Okay.
Kids need predictability, and that includes knowing what'll happen if they break the rules. If those rules are changing all the time, it's just confusing. It makes them anxious.
Consistency and clarity. Got it. What about when they do break the rules? What kind of consequences does the source suggest?
They emphasize using logical consequences whenever possible.
Okay.
So, for example, if they refuse to put their shoes on in the morning, the consequence might be they're late for school.
It helps them connect their actions with the outcome. And it takes the emotion out of it, which is good for both of us, I think.
Exactly. It ends that power struggle.
Yeah.
Helps them see that their choices have real-world effects. Okay, so we've talked about discipline, fostering independence, and the power of positive reinforcement. Now let's move on to something I think is super important. Nurturing creativity and imagination. Why is that so crucial for harmonious development?
Oh, I love this one.
Creativity, it's not just about art. It's a way of thinking, approaching problems, seeing the world. It's about being curious, flexible, thinking outside the box. Skills that are valuable in every part of life.
So we want to encourage them to be curious, to experiment, to try things without being afraid to mess up.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Like, give them some cardboard boxes, let them build a fort, encourage them to tell stories, put on some music, let them dance.
I love that. It's all about creating a space where they feel free to express themselves, let their imaginations run wild. Along with that creative side, our source also talks about building those strong social skills.
Right.
Why is that so important?
Well, we live in a world where everything's so connected. Social skills, they're more crucial than ever.
Oh, sure.
They need them for healthy relationships, navigating all kinds of social situations, even succeeding in their careers later on.
So it's not just about, sharing toys and saying please and thank you.
It's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's teaching them empathy, how to communicate well, resolve conflict peacefully, understand different perspectives. And it starts with us modeling those behaviors.
So showing them how to treat others with kindness, respect, and understanding.
Exactly. And giving them opportunities to practice those skills. Play dates, team sports, even just conversations with people of different ages and backgrounds. Every interaction is a chance to learn and grow.
So we're expanding their world, helping them build those connections that are so important.
Right. And it's important to remember that social skills, like any skill, they take time and practice. There'll be bumps in the road, misunderstandings, even arguments. But each experience is a chance to learn and get better.
And we can be there to guide them, support them, cheer them on.
As we're talking about all these pieces of harmonious development, I keep thinking about patience. It seems to be like a common thread in all this advice we're looking at.
It's true. Parenting is a marathon, not a sprint, right? And we definitely need a lot of patience, both for our kids and ourselves.
Yeah, we got to remember that growth takes time. There'll be setbacks, and it's okay to not have all the answers. It's about the journey, with all its ups and downs.
And celebrating those little bits of progress, no matter how small.
Absolutely. And remembering that each kid develops in their own way, at their own pace, trusting that with love, support, and, yeah, a little patience, they'll become those amazing people they're meant to be.
Before we move on, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, nurturing each child's unique talents and passions. I know we've both seen those sparks light up in kids we've worked with. What comes to mind for you?
It makes me think of this student I mentored a while back. He was so passionate about coding. He loved figuring out how things worked. He'd spend hours on the computer building websites. At first, he was a little shy about sharing his work, but with some encouragement, he really blossomed. He even entered a coding competition and won first place.
That's fantastic.
It was so great to see his confidence grow as he realized what he could do.
It just shows how important it is to give kids a space where they feel safe to explore their interests, take risks, and really shine in their own way.
Yeah, recognizing that each child has something special to offer the world. And our job is to help them discover and nurture those gifts.
We're getting close to the end of our deep dive, but there's one more point I want to highlight.
Okay.
It's that message about how what we do today is shaping who our kids become tomorrow.
It's a powerful reminder of the long-term impact of our choices as parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about getting through the day, It's about investing in their future, their well-being, and the world we want them to live in.
It's a legacy we're building, something that'll last long after we're gone.
It's humbling, isn't it? Makes you realize how important it is to be intentional, mindful, to parent with love and a sense of responsibility.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about. What does harmonious development mean to you? What are those values and skills that you want your kids to have so they can face the world with confidence and compassion?
It really is a question worth thinking about.
Yeah.
And, the answer might be different for every family, for each kid. But I think deep down, we all want our kids to be happy, to be healthy, to live a good life.
Absolutely. And the source, they remind us that this whole idea of harmonious development, it's a journey, not a finish line.
Right.
It takes patience and understanding and being willing to, adjust as our kids grow and change.
They're being present, really seeing and hearing our kids, creating a space where they feel safe, loved, supported.
We've talked about so many great strategies today, from understanding those developmental stages to fostering independence, encouraging creativity. It's a lot. But for me, one of the biggest takeaways is that it's not about being a perfect parent. It's about being there, being present and loving.
That's so important. There's no one right way to do this parenting
Yeah.
thing. We're all going to make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
We're all going to have those days where we feel like we're messing it up. What matters is that we keep showing up for our kids, that we keep learning and growing right alongside them.
And remembering that connection, that bond we build with our kids, that's the foundation for everything.
It really is. It's where their resilience comes from, their confidence, their compassion.
Yeah.
It's that safe haven they can come back to when things are tough, that source of strength when they face challenges.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm just struck by how much wisdom is packed into this source material.
Me too.
It's a good reminder that parenting, it's an art and a science. It takes intuition and empathy and really understanding how kids develop and grow.
It's a lifelong learning process, and the more we learn, the more we realize there's so much more to learn.
Which is what makes it so interesting, so rewarding.
It is.
It's a journey for all of us, not just for our kids, but for us as parents, too.
So to all the parents, caregivers, mentors out there listening, embrace the journey, celebrate those small wins, and never underestimate the impact you're having on those kids you love.
You're shaping the future, one hug, one bedtime story, one connection at a time.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into raising resilient and capable kids.
Hope you found it insightful, maybe even a little reassuring.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There's help out there, communities, resources, support systems to help you through the tough stuff and celebrate the good stuff.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep nurturing those amazing young minds.